Hooks Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. Red for Ed. A year ago, we witnessed a remarkable scene, the Red for Ed march to the state capitol. 50,000 plus, mainly teachers demanding better pay, more funding for education in Arizona. A year later, we reflect back on what was gained, what was lost, and where education advocacy goes from here. Let's get started. Don Penich-Thacker, co-founder of Save Our Schools, is our guest this week on Newsmaker Sunday. This was a group that fought the expansion of vouchers in Arizona. Your efforts helped defeat Prop 305. In November, voters rejected that by 2-1.
That's right.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I saw you last in a debate we did on that issue, on vouchers.
That's right.
Okay, we're a year past what we saw. What's your take on where we are now?
Well, I think we made a big gain in some teacher salaries, and we have a whole lot more to go. If you talk to a lot of teachers, some teachers saw, 5%, when you break that out over a paycheck, it's maybe one more meal out or, maybe one more student loan payment. It gets easier. Some teachers saw bigger. Some teachers saw a 15% raise, and that really starts to make a difference in their lives. But what we didn't see, what we haven't seen, is real wide infrastructure improvements. We haven't seen the spending that we do on individual students go up. We haven't seen our teacher...
Talking classrooms or actual physical structure?
Both. We still have buses that are not safe. We still have roofs that are leaking. We still have textbooks that are falling apart. Those things are still on the to-do list.
How important is that? And by the way, we're going to hear from Mike Broomhead from 550 KFYI, who has been somewhat critical of the Red for Ed effort on the political side. We're going to talk to Mike later in the program. When I see kids in the school, and some of them are better than others, some are really, really nice. They look like junior colleges. Some of them are dilapidated. Socrates taught in a field, and a lot of people learned a lot from Socrates. How much does it matter?
It matters as much as kind of the teacher, the support structure allows it to matter. So that's why kind of this teacher retention rate and this teacher vacancy crisis that we have is so significant. Because you're right, you can still learn a lot in a building that's not fancy. But if you have a different substitute every single day, which is the reality of 70,000 Arizona public school students, they don't have a permanent teacher. They have a sub every single day. And I don't know about you, but I would not have learned in that situation.
We lived it. My kids are all in public school, all three of them. They're twin boys in high school. One of them in Spanish has had 3 teachers this year.
Yeah.
And his Spanish proficiency and advancement has suffered.
Right.
It is unquestionable.
Right. So I was speaking to a teacher this morning who her child has had 3 math teachers this year. So when we talk about, focusing in on this, reading, writing, and arithmetic, how are you going to learn math in junior high from 3 different teachers and a bunch of subs in between them?
How much of this is people retiring? How much of it is truly teachers saying, I quit, I'm done, I'm out? And how much of it is just teachers reaching the end of their time and they check out, they retire?
It's a little bit of both, but I'll tell you a statistic that is true as of this year. We have the highest teacher turnover here in Arizona in the entire nation, but not just the highest, 3 times higher than any other state in the union.
Is this a pay issue?
It is a pay issue, but it's also that, even people who go to college to become teachers, then they get in that classroom and their passion is there, they want to learn, but the support is not there. So, I was at an elementary school 3 weeks ago for National Public Schools Week, and it's a very low-income elementary school in Central Phoenix. And I said, what are you proud of? What's an innovation or something that you're doing right that we can brag about? And they said, we're really excited. We put together a library. We don't have a librarian, and we don't have enough books for all the kids, but we have a library for the first time. And I just thought, my God, this is Phoenix, Arizona, and we have an elementary school
with no library.
That feels like a library is an innovation.
We'll look at some of the video of this past year of some of the Red for Ed stuff. How much of this do you believe, and I'll get into this with Mike Broomhead later in the show from KFYI, How much of this do you believe was a political effort? And how much of it was an education, advocacy, grassroots teachers' effort?
I will tell you that I think for 99.9% of us who are out there in those streets and on those Capitol grounds, it was 100% about education, about our students, about our colleagues.
Did the people in these marches understand that there was maybe an underlying political component?
I don't think so. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I think that there were forces, organizations, candidates who looked at this upsurge of activism and interest and said, I can do something with that.
Oh yeah, this is votes.
Yeah. And so I think that happened. And I think that that's actually something that has changed, and we're in a different place this year. I think the interest is even more bipartisan now in funding our schools better, in finally figuring this out. You know,
instead of having an adversarial relationship.
Yeah.
Mike Broomhead is going to talk about this later, but he said instead of kind of beating the Republicans at the legislature over the head, maybe we need to work with those people to get some buy-in on all this.
100%. You know, the fact that Senate Education Committee Chairwoman Sylvia Allen, a Republican from Snowflake,
that's right,
put forward a education funding proposal this year.
It's a sales tax increase.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we're going, because the governor has pretty much said we are not going to raise taxes. So the only way to do it really is for the voters to say, well, thank you, Mr. Governor, we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
right?
You know, and you know, you can question polling all day long and it would be legitimate, but there are a lot of polls that say regular Arizona people are willing to pitch in another half a penny.
Okay, now you are an educator. This is something that has troubled me about this whole discussion. When we talk about more money, you look at California and you look at New York, they dump a lot of money into education and their product is not very good. They've got a lot of problems in those states right now. As consumers, I'm talking about parents, how do we link more money, better funding, to an outcome where people go, we spent for that and look at what we're getting?
Yeah.
How do we quantify?
You know, and you're right. You know, Arizona teachers are miracle workers because our test scores.
I agree with that,
yeah,
by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we are defying gravity on test scores, remarkably, given the funding.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that we maintain, you know, the objectives that we have, tracking those outcomes. And there's more we could do. I think this conversation may vary between, you know, urban school districts and rural school districts. Maybe there's some efficiency that we can get into place in some areas that are losing population. Maybe we can track something that teachers love to talk about. We can track growth. So sure, you did fine on that math test last year, but can we get you better?
Did you improve?
Yeah.
Do you believe down the line, and I've given this a lot of thought, and this is a threat to teachers potentially, that online learning may allow a more interactive experience for a teacher, and I'm thinking particularly about boys. How do you get boys in the digital age holding that device to engage? Online learning becoming something that not only is more engaging, but that they also can track on their own pace. If you have a kid who's struggling, they continue to have to go over the material and learn it before they can advance. Everybody can kind of go at a different pace. It's not dictated by the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, sure. And, you know, I personally don't know anyone who has everyone loves to have a computer lab in the school or computers or iPads or something in the classroom. I think that most teachers would say you can't just put kids in a room alone with computers and the iPad. You still need, you know, experts in there. You need us, just like parenting.
Right.
You need to be able to say back on task, honey, you know.
Exactly.
And you know, that's an area that a lot of our schools would really love some funding for, is to update computer systems. To
now,
get
why couldn't the private
literacy.
sector get involved in saying, okay, Intel or somebody saying, we're going to fund that?
Well, you know, they already do a lot of amazing grants to individual districts and stuff like that, but that's another thing that gets talked about a lot. What about the corporate tax rate? Could they kick in just a little more than they do now to grow a better workforce for themselves? These are conversations we can have.
And that's interesting, because Governor Ducey on the funding end and education becoming something of a priority for him, actually.
Yeah, agreed.
Part of it is tied into, we can't have a robust economy if we have a bad school system. People won't want to locate here.
Right.
Companies won't want to locate here.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I know a gentleman down in Sierra Vista, so down, near the Army base and the border, who said he cannot get physicians to come and work at the hospital. Not the hospital is beautiful. The job would be great. They worry about the schools that their kids would go to.
Okay. We've got a couple minutes left. First of all, vouchers, which I know you were involved in. What is the problem with vouchers?
The problem, the way we have it set up in Arizona, is that every voucher is money taken out of the public education budget. And so in a state where we don't have enough funding, where 95% of families are choosing public and charter schools for their kiddos, why are we creating mechanisms or expanding mechanisms to take money out of that? We need to be focusing on where our students are, and that's in public schools.
What about the parent who says, I want choice, and I'm a taxpayer, I want to be able to take my kid wherever I want to go?
That is a beautiful thing that we have here. Any Arizona parent can go to any school that they want. And in addition to vouchers, we also have all kinds of scholarships that corporations and individuals pay into. There are so many options, but those options shouldn't rob from Peter to pay Paul.
30 seconds. Bottom line for me, where we're at a year later.
I think that we are at a good place to come to a table in a bipartisan fashion, in a really realistic fashion, and say, let's hammer something out. Voters want it, Republicans want it, Democrats want it. Let's figure this out.
And kind of stop the adversarial part of this.
Absolutely. Just like kids, we don't get anything done that way.
It's always great to have you on. Don Penich-Thacker with Save Our Schools. We really appreciate it. Thank you. We'll be back in a minute with KFYI's Mike Broomhead, host of the Mike Broomhead Show on 550 KFYI. He's going to talk about some of the political implications of the Red for Ed movement. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. Thank you. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, discussing Red for Ed a year later. And a guy who has taken a very hard line on this entire operation is KFYI talk show host Mike Broomhead, host of the Mike Broomhead Show, 6 to 10 on 550 KFYI. Mike, great to see you.
Well, good to be here.
I've got to be honest, we wanted to get teachers who are not in agreement with Red for Ed to talk about their feelings about the movement and get another perspective. And it is very difficult to get those people to come on television. Why?
It's difficult because there is a pushback within the school system. Teachers are told to wear red on Wednesdays to support Red for Ed, and for a long time, they're actually writing teachers' names down that are not team players. I wouldn't say there's physical intimidation, but there's definitely professional intimidation of why aren't you a team player?
This is union intimidation?
Absolutely.
Okay, Mike, the central question here as we look at some of the aerials of this remarkable movement, I mean, we hadn't seen anything like this since the march, the 1070 marches. Is Red for Ed, in your opinion, an organic teachers movement or a political operation?
It is a political operation that used the organic teachers movement of the teachers that said, we do need a raise, let's have one voice, that thought they were joining onto something for a raise, that was really a political movement.
So you're saying that the leaders of this movement attracted and coalesced these teachers onto something that they may not have fully understood what they were getting on board
Absolutely,
with.
And I've heard it from the teachers themselves. The teachers that will speak to me privately because they know I won't out their names have said to me that's exactly what happened. They just wanted a voice to be heard. They wanted their voices heard, that they wanted a raise. They didn't think they were being compensated fairly, which I agreed with. I've heard
you talk about this. You do not disagree that teachers need more money.
Yes.
You're disagreeing a bit with the tactics and the transparency of what's going on. Is that?
Day one of the Red for Ed movement, when they came out in Arizona, Joe Thomas, who was with AEA or AEU,
I've had
the
Joe
unions.
on the program. Delightful guy.
Joe Thomas said, I am not Red for Ed. He supported David Garcia for governor and said he wanted, and he did that day one and said, I am not Red for Ed. Joe Thomas runs Red for Ed now. He is in charge of Red for Ed.
Let's show that video. This is tape number 2. This is March 7th, 2018. There's a march, Red for Ed, gets to the Capitol, and it turns into an endorsement for David Garcia, another guy I've had on the program who I like a great deal. But at that moment, I think there were some teachers who were going, wait a minute, how did we end up in the endorsement business here?
They said from the beginning, this is not political. This is not political. It absolutely, which they have a right to be political, but be transparent about who you are.
This is what I was going to ask you. I mean, it is as American as anything else to coalesce and say, we're going to try to drive an agenda, something we want accomplished. And not only do you do it organically, but you do it politically. So what's the problem if they do that?
The problem isn't what they're doing. I've said very honestly on the air, I respect the fact that they stand up for what they believe in. It's better than people that complain than do nothing. But it is the fact that they have gone completely underground. You can't get on their Facebook pages. If you're not a member, they vet you. They check your IP address number. They only let in the group. They've purged on 2 different occasions people that disagree with them that are teachers. And teachers are telling me we're afraid to speak out because we are getting professional blowback on us. A teacher I know said that when she went against the movement, she's getting bad reviews. They've changed her from one classroom to another. She's going to a different school. There is professional blowback. And who wants to go to work and deal with an adversarial situation?
What do you think? What do you think the breakdown is? Break it down in a percentage. What percentage of teachers are fully on board with Red for Ed and the political arm of it versus those who are like, I don't know about this?
I would say it's a smaller percentage of the people that are on board because we saw what happened this week. There were 6 people in the gallery.
Yeah.
8 people in the gallery.
Let's show tape number 4. This was Red for Ed teachers and supporters who brought their attention to US 60 at Extension. It was a pretty thin crowd. I mean, now that is not an ideal place to set up a protest, number one. But what do you read from that?
Well, it was 70,000 people last year, one of which I was a supporter of them getting their raises. And what they're seeing is there are more than the average teacher says, I don't want to be involved in politics. I just want to do my job.
How do you separate out someone who says, if you don't like Red for Ed, you're anti-education, you're anti-teacher?
It's laughable to me. I have 4 grandsons, and they all are going to be in the public education system. And I want a quality education for all children. I just don't agree with their tactics and what they're doing. Why couldn't we start a conversation from, we both want what's best, we just disagree on what's best? They don't. They say you're either with us or you're the enemy.
Okay, let's go to tape number 5. This is Noah Carvallis. He is leaving now after being a seminal organizer of Red for Ed. Young guy. He's heading back to Wisconsin apparently to get his master's, or I'm not exactly sure. Noah Carvallis, what do you know about him?
I had him on the show early in the movement. Was very nice, very cordial conversation. But he has been writing for socialist publications, blogs for years. And he is a self-affirmed socialist. He believes capitalism has ruined public education. He writes about it often. He spoke at the National Socialist Convention the day after they got their signatures on the ballot last year to a 40-second standing ovation for getting it on the ballot, and then says it's not political.
Okay, so let's get to the ballot measure. During this Red for Ed, they're demanding more pay, better funding for schools, and they always said that got lost in the debate, that they wanted more money for schools. It wasn't just about teacher raises. Be that as it may. In the end, the governor kind of cut them out at the knees and said, I'm going to give you a raise. Did that take this group did it shock them? Did it completely take them by surprise?
I think it did, because they had to morph their message from, we're walking out if we don't get a raise. They actually said, we don't believe you. We're walking out to force you to keep your word. They had to re-message completely in the next couple of days. The governor's been coming on my show since his first day in office and has always talked about better quality education in Arizona. He did not all of a sudden dream this up when they demanded the raise. And so I just don't think they've treated him fairly.
No, and it's interesting because I did the gubernatorial debate that was solely on education in 2014 between, the governor race, Fred Duvall. It was completely on education, and I think Ducey was a late adopter of more funding for education, and I believe that his push, part of it is that he wants to attract top flight companies here.
Right.
He knows you can't do it without a really good education system. So I think there's a few reasons why he's kind of come around on that. But the governor, when he did that, you believe that the underlying goal of Red for Ed was actually to get this ballot initiative on, which was to tax the rich, to pay for education, which got thrown out
Yes.
in the state Supreme Court.
I do. I believe that in the end they thought we're going to push for something we know we're not going to get. Then we're going to go to the people and say they won't fund education, so you need to. And we're going to do this by taxing the wealthiest among us. They can pay a little bit more, which turned out to be a lot more. But they thought that they would get the tax increase by the will of the people, and they ended up the governor cut their knees out from under
So
them.
you thought that was mainly a political document.
Sure.
It was a progressive political document to tax the wealthy, kind of right out of the progressive playbook.
One of their 5 demands was no tax cuts. I mean, how do you as an organization say to the legislature, we want what we want for our industry, which is fair, but no tax cuts?
Okay, let me ask you, Mike, bottom line this, and I've got 3 kids in public education right now, and they've had a pretty good experience. We've had a couple of bumps, but it's been generally good, and the teachers are well-intentioned, and a lot of them are just wonderful people. Lost in this entire conversation is if we do this and give teachers more money, if we invest more in education, as a consumer, which we ultimately are, what are we getting on the back end? Is there any nexus to better test scores, better graduation rates? That seems to have been completely lost in the conversation.
The other part of it is that all of these school districts are autonomous. You cannot force them to spend their money in the classroom. They are totally in control of these budgets. And even if you fund the schools more, you are not guaranteed that that school is going to put more dollars in the classroom. That's the other part of this, where the governor and the legislature funded this.
Right.
But there's no guarantee that it gets to the classroom.
You've got to be hearing from teachers, I do, that even though they got a bump this year, their pension benefits have gone up, their contribution they've got to put in, and their health care costs have gone up. Therefore, they say, even though I got a little bit more, I'm spinning my wheels, I'm not getting ahead. Are you hearing that same thing?
I hear the same thing, but I also hear from people within the movement, and we have the messages where people are saying, if we are not political and we want to accomplish our goals, shouldn't we be trying to bring the Republicans to the table and say to them, this is what we feel, instead of alienating them and making them the enemy? And they're getting pushback from the leadership that that's not what they want.
I want to show tape number 7. This is Joe Thomas last month at a meeting, a union meeting. Just listen in a little bit. He was railing about, we need to organize. We got to put pressure on. Listen to this.
Because the legislature needs to see that we're serious, that we're paying attention, that we've not closed our eyes, and they've not done enough.
That's just a little snippet of it. It got pretty salty there. He was really, really worked up.
When we've now heard that the NEAs and the big national teachers organizations are coming in because that is bad optics. And that is the intimidation that teachers are talking about, is that they feel like that they are being told in their schools, you will wear red, even if you're not going to protest, get your red shirt on, show support, and they're being pushed against if they don't do it.
Where are we in this debate in this state about politicking in the classroom?
See, personally, I don't think we should have to have a law that tells a teacher what they can and can't say, because there's always unintended consequences.
Sure.
But when you're in a situation where we know that teachers are bringing politics into the schools, now what do you do about it? Because there are teachers that just don't want to deal with politics.
Teachers are not allowed to wear red in the classroom, correct?
Well, no, they wear red.
They do.
Don't they? They wear red T-shirts on schools.
I'm not sure. I think some schools frown upon it. Others
Sure.
might say go for it.
But they may not be wearing the red for red shirts, but nothing stops them from wearing the red T-shirts. There's an organization called Purple for Parents. There are some teachers that are out that will wear purple on Wednesdays to show their opposition, but there aren't very many of those either.
Mike, 30 seconds. A year later, where is Red for Ed now in your view? You're getting a whole different take from the teachers who talk to you.
I think that they're struggling because they have gone so underground that they want to be seen as an organization that is doing what's best for children, but they're not you can't go to their Facebook page and see what they're all about. So they are basically an underground movement now, where they were 70,000 strong and getting national attention. So they've got a big image problem.
In the end, has it hurt the cause or helped the cause?
I think it's hurt the cause immensely, because I was on their side at the very beginning of getting raises, and now I'm the biggest opposer they have. They've lost me.
Mike Broomhead, 550 KFYI. Great to see you, Mike. Really appreciate it. And we're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. Thank you, Mike. And again, thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. A really interesting discussion on Red for Ed 1 year later. We are back next week on Newsmaker Saturday. In the meantime, you can reach me on Facebook and Twitter. It's easy, both platforms, John Hook, Fox 10. We'll see you again next week on Newsmaker Saturday.